$825. That's what it costs to buy a brand new Hero Splendor at a dealership in Mumbai, India. It's the best-selling motorcycle on Earth by annual volume. Well over 3 million of them roll off Indian assembly lines every year across the Splendor family. You can buy one in Lagos, you can buy one in Bogotá, you can buy one in Manila, in Dhaka, in Kampala, or literally downtown Kathmandu. That was the case throughout the 2020s. By 2026, the United States is still the only major economy on the planet where this bike does not exist in a single retail showroom. And the reason is not that Americans ignored it. It's way weirder than that. Los Angeles, June 1959. American Honda Motor Company opens its first showroom on West Pico Boulevard. The Honda 50 Super Cub is priced at $295. That's roughly $3,000 in today's money. Within 3 years, Honda dealerships across California are moving more than 40,000 of those little bikes annually. The pattern repeats through the early 1960s with Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki. Small, cheap, lightweight motorcycles flood the American market. You could buy one in any strip mall dealership in the country. Fast forward to right now. Hero MotoCorp sold about 5.9 million two-wheelers in their last fiscal year. Bajaj Auto sold roughly 4.6 million total vehicles, about 3.7 million of those being motorcycles, and the rest three-wheelers and commercial units. Between them, that's more motorcycles in a single year than the entire American motorcycle market consumes in more than a decade. And yet neither company sells a single retail motorcycle in the United States. Ever. Not one. So how did we get here? How did the two biggest motorcycle manufacturers on Earth decide that the richest motorcycle market in the Western Hemisphere was not worth showing up for? I went down this rabbit hole for about 3 weeks. What I found is not a conspiracy. It's worse than a conspiracy. It's math. Let's start with the scale problem because it matters. India sold about 20 million two-wheelers last year. The United States, combining on-road motorcycles, dual sports, and scooters, sold roughly 357,000 units in 2025, according to the Motorcycle Industry Council. India's motorcycle market is roughly 50 times bigger than America's. Global motorcycle and two-wheeler sales hit somewhere between 55 and 62 million units in 2024, depending on whether you count scooters, mopeds, and three-wheelers in the same basket. Asia accounts for around 72% of that. The US accounts for well under 1%. I mean, think about that for a second. The average American rider thinks of motorcycles as a Harley on a Sunday and a Ninja at a stoplight. The average Indian rider thinks of a motorcycle as the thing I got to work on this morning. Now meet the Hero Splendor. Starting price, 76,249 Indian rupees. That is around $825 for the base model, and up to about $890 for the top X-Tech variant. It is a 97 cubic centimeter four-stroke single, air-cooled, with a claimed 70 miles per gallon in real-world conditions. Hero MotoCorp has sold more Splendors than any other single motorcycle brand has sold of any single model in any year, anywhere, for over 2 decades running. This is the bike that moves Indian cities. This is the bike that carries 3-person families through Delhi traffic. And the Bajaj Pulsar, the Platina, the Boxer, these are all the same story. A 125 cubic centimeter Bajaj Pulsar sells in Lagos for around $790. If you are wondering how a motorcycle costs $790, so is everyone else. The answer is scale. When you make 5 million of anything a year, the unit cost collapses. Okay, here's where it gets wild. There's a decent chance you've already ridden a Bajaj-built motorcycle and didn't know it. The KTM 390 Duke sold at your local Austrian motorcycle dealership since 2012 was built by Bajaj Auto at their Chakan industrial plant outside Pune, India. The Husqvarna Svartpilen 401, sitting in Scandinavian-branded showrooms across America, comes from the same Chakan assembly line. The Triumph Speed 400 that launched in the United States in March 2024 for $4,995 was built by Bajaj under a partnership with British motorcycle heritage giant Triumph. Same plant, same Indian engineers, different badge. On the Bajaj Auto earnings call in May 2025, an executive named Rakesh Sharma explained the strategy in exactly the kind of corporate understatement that tells you everything. He said Bajaj's direct exposure to tariff-vulnerable markets like the United States comes through KTM and Triumph and amounts to less than 1% of our total revenue. That is the single most important sentence in this entire story. The United States, the country with the most disposable income on earth, the country that invented the modern motorcycle market, is a sub 1% rounding error in Bajaj's revenue statement. And Bajaj is the third largest motorcycle manufacturer on the planet. So let's ask the obvious question. What's stopping Bajaj from just slapping their own name on one of those Chakan motorcycles and shipping it to a dealer in Dallas? Turns out there's a wall most riders have never seen because it's made of paperwork. If you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. I dig into weird motorcycle industry stuff like this every single week, and the algorithm only shows you this channel when you actually tell it to. All right, back to the wall. So here's the bit everyone gets wrong online. You see forum posts from angry American riders saying it costs $30,000 to get a bike EPA certified. That's why they don't come here. That figure came from a hobby blog. It is not accurate. The actual Environmental Protection Agency motorcycle certification fee in the fiscal year 2026 schedule is $1,662 per engine family per model year, less than $2,000. That's a rounding error for a company shipping 5 million bikes. But, and this is a huge but, that $1,662 is just the certification fee. It does not include the testing you have to pass to qualify for the piece of paper. The real expense sits inside a building in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and a couple dozen contract laboratories across the country. To get a motorcycle certified under Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 86, Subpart E for exhaust emissions, your engine family has to run extended durability testing, covering thousands of kilometers of operation on a chassis dynamometer, while engineers measure regulated emissions with high precision. Then you run the federal test procedure, which simulates a specific drive cycle your bike has to survive. Then you run the shed test, a sealed, temperature-controlled room that measures evaporative emissions from the fuel tank. Then you run permeation testing on the fuel hose, the gas tank, and the carbon canister under Title 40, Part 1051. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration layer is separate. Motorcycles have to self-certify compliance with the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, specifically Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 106 for brake hoses, 108 for lighting, 111 for mirrors, 116 for brake fluid, 119 and 120 for tires and rims, 122 for brake performance standards, and 123 for controls and displays. Self-certify is the key phrase. The manufacturer signs a document saying the bike meets the standards, and if it does not, they are legally exposed for every injury the bike ever causes in America, forever. Here is one of the strangest parts of the whole story. The European Union has required anti-lock braking systems on all new motorcycles above 125 cubic centimeters since January 2016. India followed with a similar mandate in April 2019. The United States has no federal anti-lock braking system mandate at all. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 122 sets performance requirements only if anti-lock braking is actually installed. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety petitioned the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for an anti-lock braking mandate in 2013 and again in 2023. The National Transportation Safety Board recommended a mandate in 2018. NHTSA has not acted. So American riders are simultaneously less regulated than the rest of the world on safety and more regulated than almost anywhere on emissions. That is the weirdness of the American motorcycle market in one sentence. Then California runs its own parallel system under Title 13 of the California Code of Regulations, Section 1958 for exhaust and Section 1976 for evaporative. The California Air Resources Board issues its own executive orders. If you want to sell in all 50 states, you have to do the federal tests plus the California Air Resources Board tests plus engineering changes to hit the tighter California numbers. How much does this cost for real? One small motorcycle manufacturer reported in a 2021 NHTSA rulemaking comment that redesigning a single ABS telltale indicator on their instrument cluster and rehomologating the bike would cost around $150,000 for a warning light, not the ABS system, the light. A guy named Scott Colosimo, who founded Cleveland Cycle Works, tried to build small displacement motorcycles for the American market in the 2010s. He said publicly that EPA and CARB compliance required tens of thousands of dollars upfront for each engine family before a single bike could ship. In 2020, he pivoted the entire company out of internal combustion engines and into electric vehicles. He cited the regulatory cost specifically as the reason. So that is the federal layer. Now let us talk about what happens after you have the piece of paper. You still cannot sell anything because you do not have dealers. The United States has the strangest vehicle retail system in the industrialized world. It is called the franchise dealer system, and it is rooted in protections that state legislatures passed mostly in the 1930s, the 40s, and the 50s, when local dealers were getting squeezed by factory-owned operations. Every state, plus DC, has its own dealer statute. Texas Occupations Code, Section 2301.476, prohibits a motorcycle manufacturer from owning a dealership in Texas. California Vehicle Code Section 11,713.3 does the same. Florida statutes, Section 320.645, backs it up with good cause termination rules. Motorcycle relevant market areas define how close you can put two dealers to each other, and they typically extend 20 to 40 miles. Existing dealers have the right to formally protest new dealerships for the same line make before state regulatory boards. Virginia requires manufacturers to pre-file their franchise agreements 60 days in advance. California, Texas, and Florida each have different bond and licensing requirements. You are looking at manufacturer and distributor licenses in all 50 states, plus a network of actual dealer showrooms willing to carry your unknown brand. Industry estimates put the cost to launch a national dealer network of 100 to 200 points somewhere in the tens of millions of dollars. Before you sell your first bike, Tesla has been fighting this system for about 15 years, trying to sell cars directly to consumers. In most states, they have lost. Hero and Bajaj would not even get the narrow non-fossil fuel exemption Tesla occasionally wins. They would be stuck doing it the old-fashioned way, signing hundreds of individual dealer franchise agreements with small American motorcycle shops, willing to bet on a brand nobody in the United States has ever heard of. Now here is the final wall, the unit economics. Let's say a Hero Splendor costs about $825 at an Indian dealership. To ship it to the United States, you pay ocean freight and logistics that add 10 to 15%, and an import duty for any bike under 500 cubic centimeters that is actually zero, because the harmonized tariff schedule codes those displacements at the free rate. Even for bikes over 500 cubic centimeters, the base US motorcycle tariff is just 2.4%. That shocked me when I found it. Everyone online says the US tariff wall is what kills imports. It is not. It is everything else. So let us say shipping and handling add around $120, putting the Splendor landed cost at roughly $945. You need to amortize the certification and homologation cost across the first few years of US sales, which adds, let us be generous, $150 per unit. Now it is $1,095. You need dealer margin. On new motorcycles, that is typically 10 to 15% gross. That pushes it to around $1,260 at the showroom floor. You need warranty reserves, parts distribution infrastructure, US liability insurance, marketing, and legal overhead. By the time a Splendor actually rolls into a Dallas showroom, it needs to retail for roughly $2,000 to $2,500 just to break even for Hero. And at that price point, the Splendor's competition in the US market is already waiting. The Honda Grom costs $3,599, and it actually runs 58 miles per hour on interstate ramps. The Kawasaki Xeon 25 Pro is $3,699. The Royal Enfield Hunter 350 is $4,299, and it has enough displacement to legally and safely ride on American highways. The Splendor, at 97 cubic centimeters, cannot safely keep up with American interstate traffic, where posted limits are 65 to 80 miles an hour, and the actual flow of traffic pushes higher. So Hero would need to build a different bike for America. A bigger bike, a more expensive bike, a bike that does not exist in their product catalog. Here is the weird part. Hero MotoCorp has the money. They closed their fiscal year 2025 with revenue around $4.9 billion, net profit around $555 million, and cash reserves around $2.3 billion. The company is essentially debt-free. They could write a check for a US entry tomorrow and not feel it. Their lineup just does not have a product that makes economic sense in a country where the average motorcycle displacement is 700 to 900 cubic centimeters. And Harley-Davidson still holds roughly 35% of the 601 cubic centimeters plus market and close to 3/4 of the touring category. Hero's only 400 cubic centimeters plus bike is the Harley-Davidson X440, which they co-developed with Harley after Harley closed its India operation in 2020. The partnership is contractually limited to India and select markets excluding the United States. Why? Because selling an Indian-built Harley in America would cannibalize Harley's home sales. So Hero has a big bike, they just cannot ship it to the one market that wants big bikes. Bajaj is in the exact same boat. Their lineup is dominated by the Pulsar series, which tops out at 400 cubic centimeters. They could theoretically sell a Pulsar 400 in the United States, but they already sell that bike in the United States, sort of. It is called the KTM 390 Duke. It is built at Chakan and shipped to American KTM dealerships under a badge American riders already trust. Okay, so if the walls are this high, how on earth did Royal Enfield do it? Great question, and the answer is the whole punchline of this video. Royal Enfield did not fight the same battle. They chose a completely different battle. Royal Enfield is owned by Eicher Motors, an Indian conglomerate run by Siddhartha Lal. In August 2015, Eicher opened Royal Enfield North America as its first wholly owned overseas subsidiary. They picked Milwaukee as the headquarters. Yes, that Milwaukee, the one Harley-Davidson calls home. They hired a 20-year Harley-Davidson veteran named Rod Copes as the first president. Copes framed the Milwaukee choice not as an attack on Harley, but as a statement that Royal Enfield wanted to be part of North American motorcycle culture, not outside of it. Royal Enfield now runs 152 dealerships across the United States. Their lineup starts at $4,299 for the Hunter 350 and tops out at $7,499 for the new Classic 650. With middle-tier bikes like the Himalayan 450 at $5,799 and the Continental GT 650 at around $6,500. Every bike has a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty. Here is what most analysts miss about Royal Enfield. Eicher Motors is less than half the size of Hero MotoCorp by revenue. But Eicher's net profit nearly matches Hero's. Why? Because Royal Enfield operates at roughly 25% EBITDA margins. That's a Ferrari-level margin on motorcycles that sell for less than $8,000. Bajaj runs around 20%. Hero runs around 14%. When your margins are that high, you can afford certification, you can afford Milwaukee, you can afford 152 dealerships, you can afford to wait for your brand to catch on. Royal Enfield crossed 1 million annual sales for the first time in fiscal year 2025. They hit 1.238 million in fiscal year 2026. They now rank among the top 5 mid-size motorcycle brands in North America, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico. Their US customer is not the Splendor buyer. Their US customer is a returning rider in his 50s who wants something cool, simple, and affordable that does not have Harley's monthly payment structure. The Royal Enfield playbook works because they did not try to sell Americans a $900 commuter bike. They sold them a $5,000 lifestyle bike. Different product, different margins, different customer, same regulatory wall, but a wall they could afford to climb because each bike they pushed over the top was making them real money. Hero and Bajaj don't have that product, so they don't climb. Now remember how I said this story has a November 2025 twist? Here it is. Back in November 2025, Bajaj Auto's Dutch subsidiary completed the acquisition of the remaining stake in the joint venture holding company formerly called Pierer Bajaj AG, making Bajaj its full owner. The entity was renamed Bajaj Auto International Holdings AG. Through that entity, Bajaj now controls roughly 74.9% of the publicly listed Austrian operating parent, which itself was renamed Bajaj Mobility AG. The remaining 25.1% remains in public float on the Zurich and Vienna exchanges. That operating parent owns 100% of KTM AG, which in turn controls Husqvarna and GasGas. In plain English, the same Indian company that people say cannot enter the American motorcycle market just became the controlling shareholder of 3 motorcycle brands that actively sell in the American market. It took Bajaj an €800 million rescue package to save KTM from a court-supervised restructuring earlier that year, after which Stefan Pierer exited the company entirely and production resumed at Mattighofen. Every time an American buys a KTM 390 Adventure, they are writing a check that several transactions later flows to Pune. That is not a TIPO. So the idea that Americans cannot buy Indian motorcycles is partly wrong, partly right, and mostly backwards. Americans can absolutely buy Indian-built motorcycles, as long as those motorcycles wear an Austrian, British, or Royal Enfield badge. What Americans cannot buy is a motorcycle that openly says "Made in India" on the tank, at a price point that reflects Indian manufacturing scale, sold through a dealer network under an Indian brand name. Honda solved this problem in 1959 because there was not yet a problem. EPA motorcycle emission standards did not exist until model year 1978. The modern tiered EPA structure with durability accumulation, evaporative and permeation testing did not arrive until 2006. The interstate highway system was not fully built in 1959. American suburbs were denser. American commutes were shorter. The Honda Super Cub entered a blank canvas. Hero and Bajaj arrive in the opposite world. Full regulatory stack, highway-dominated geography, Harley owning the lifestyle segment, no blank canvas to paint on. One last thing, because I know this question is in the comments already. What about just importing one privately? What if I want to pay my own money to ship a Pulsar 400 to Denver? Private question, obvious temptation. There are two legal pathways for private motorcycle imports in the United States. The 25-year rule under 49 CFR Section 591.5I exempts vehicles that are 25 years old or older from federal motor vehicle safety standards. EPA runs a parallel 21-year exemption. In calendar year 2026, this covers motorcycles built in 2001 or earlier. A Hero Splendor built before 2001? Yes. A Bajaj Chetak scooter built before 2001? Yes. A Royal Enfield Bullet from the 1990s? Yes. A current model 2025 Pulsar? Absolutely not. The second pathway is the Registered Importer Program under 49 CFR Part 5 92. A registered importer can legally modify a non-conforming imported motorcycle to meet United States safety equipment standards. They can fix your brake hoses, they can swap your lighting. But here is what kills the pathway for modern bikes. EPA regulations make post-manufacture emissions compliance extremely difficult and rarely viable in practice. That is the wall nobody online mentions. A registered importer can make the bike safe. They almost certainly cannot make it emissions legal, which means your imported Pulsar cannot realistically be titled for on-road use in the United States unless you wait until it is 21 years old. Even Royal Enfield, whose bikes are legally sold in the United States every day, publishes a private import policy on their Indian website warning buyers in other countries that bikes imported outside the authorized channel cannot be registered in destination countries where certification is region-specific. They are telling their own customers not to do it. So where does that leave us? Let's zoom out. Americans were never given direct retail access to Indian motorcycles. The market did not reject them. The market was never offered them. The two largest motorcycle manufacturers on Earth looked at America, ran the numbers on certification, dealer licensing, unit economics, product category fit, and competitive landscape, and concluded that 99% of their revenue sits elsewhere. The one Indian company that climbed the wall did it by refusing to fight the same economic battle. Royal Enfield sells premium mid-displacement motorcycles at Ferrari margins because that is the only product category where the wall can actually be climbed. Honda did not win America in 1959 because Americans love Japanese motorcycles. Honda won America in 1959 because there was no wall yet. Hero and Bajaj arrive in 2026 with a completed wall, a Harley lifestyle monopoly above 600 cubic centimeters, a regulatory stack that did not exist when the Japanese brands arrived, and a product catalog optimized for commuting in cities that do not look anything like Dallas. The math has never really worked, and so far, it still does not. The most honest version of this story is not that Americans are banned from the best motorcycles on Earth. The most honest version is that the best motorcycles on Earth, by volume, are so specifically designed for a world the United States does not inhabit that the companies that make them have decided America is not worth the cost of redesigning their business for. That is not a ban. That is not a conspiracy. That is a strategy meeting in Pune where somebody did the math and said, nah, And somewhere in that meeting, somebody probably said that they already own most of KTM, so they kind of get us anyway.